Okay, hello. This is going to serve as a quick introduction to the topic of databases. And last week in class, we discussed a few key concepts, right? When we talk about databases. First, the idea of an entity, which an entity is an object in your database. Entities are things like, for example, if you have in the database of a library, you might have books, and that's going to be an entity. You might have members, and that's going to be an entity in the database. You have things like let's say that in this school you have students, and students is an entity in the database, right? And you have teachers, and that can be an entity in the database. You have classes. All right, so all of those can be entities in your database. Now next to the idea of next to the idea of entity is the idea of property, and the property belongs to the entity. So every entity has properties. If we take a look, for example, at books, and I'm going to write it here, books as an entity, it has different properties. For example, the title is a property. Another example of a property could be, I don't know, the publisher, the year of publication, for example, or another example of a property of a book could be the genre. There you go. All right. If we think about students, for instance, students have different properties. Of course, the name, age, maybe grade. What else? Students can have, for example, address, their code. All right, and all of these things, all of these properties, really what they are is they describe a member of the group. All right, a member of the entity. They describe the entity. All right, so that's entities and properties. A record is one of the students is going to be a record, is going to have a record. And for instance, if or one of the teachers, and the teachers can have the same properties. So for example, Victor, that's me, and there we go. That is going to be one of the records in the entity teachers. And of course, my properties are my name, my age, my grade. Well, the teacher wouldn't have a grade, but let's say I'm in charge of quinto curso, my address, my code. All right, so that becomes a record in the entity teacher with the list of properties, right? So those are basic concepts. I hope you need to get your head around these ideas. In a database management software, an entity is going to become a table, and a property is going to become a field. All right, and that's going to be the terminology given to the entities and the properties in different software programs that are used to create databases. And this stands for database management software. And the database management software that we are going to use is Access. That's the one that we're going to use, Microsoft Access. All right. All right, let's move along. Okay, so right now we need to begin planning a database. That's a very important step. If we do the planning well, we can guarantee that our database is going to be correct and it's going to work in the right way. Now, the main tool to plan the database is the entity relationship diagram. For every database that you create, you're going to have to make an entity relationship diagram. You can do that. It's basically a table that looks like this, and you can do that in Word or even Excel if you want, but Word actually works better. And you'll see as your databases get more complicated or more complex, Word is actually a good tool to use. Okay, so your entity relationship diagram represents the tables in your database. Each table represents an entity, and for each table you're going to define the field and what type of data is going to go into that field. So let's say that I have a books database, okay, and my entity is going to be the books. So what properties do I need in order to create my entity? What properties need to be included in my records? I have the relationship diagram, the entity relationship diagram already done here, and I'm going to go over it. So my entity right here is books. All right, I have the field and the type. So the first field is going to be the title. That's the first property, title, and it's going to be type text, and I'm defining here how long the field is going to be. So it's going to be 50 characters long, and it's important to say that. So the title is a text field, 50 characters long. The author is my next property. It's also text. I'm going to make it 50. 50 is kind of like a standard. Genre, it's text, and I could make this shorter because genres are not very long, but you know, just in case, I'm making it 50. Publisher, it's text, and publisher names are usually not very long, so I'm going to make it 20. All right. Publication date, and notice here that I am including an underscore. All right. And that's because I don't want to leave spaces in my name, in the name of my fields. All right, and that's going to be important later, but you have to get into the habit of not leaving a space between the names of the fields. Okay, so publication date is going to be type date, the ISBN, which is a number. Okay, so it's going to be the number, and ISBN is a unique number for every book published. Okay. Part of a series, I'm saying, is this part of a series, yes or no? Notice again, I don't leave spaces. I use underscore to put the words together. And it's going to be a Boolean field. And Boolean, really what it means is yes, no. Oops. Yes, no field. All right. Boolean. All right, so there's my field and type, and I defined every field that I need and every type. All right, and a new piece of information right here. Every entity needs to have one field that is going to be unique. That means that this data is not going to repeat. This is going to define or describe each record uniquely. Okay, I cannot repeat this number for two different books, for example. Since the ISBN is already a unique number, I'm going to make ISBN my primary key, PK, which stands for primary key. If in my table I don't have a unique identifier, the primary key basically is a unique identifier. All right. If I don't have a unique identifier, then I am going to have to create one, and I would have to like add another row here, okay, and create my primary key. Let me do that with something a little bit more visible. I'm going to have to create my primary key, and that's going to be an ID. All right, or I can name it anything I want, but for example, I can make it book underscore ID, for instance, so that I know that it's the ID field, the primary key of the book entity, book ID. Like I said, since the ISBN is already a unique number, I can make that my primary key. All right. So right now your task is to create in a Word document, create an entity relationship diagram for a flat file database you started in class. Remember last week I asked you to create, sort of like start thinking about an entity and its properties for a collection that you have, right? And you guys started out, some of you have collection of watches or shoes or cards or video games or movies, etc. So you're going to create an entity relationship diagram. That means the table, all right? And you're going to define in that table the field, the type, right? You're going to name this table, that's your entity, and you're going to define which one of the fields is your primary key. And remember that the primary key is a piece of data that identifies uniquely each record, all right? After that, at home, I want you to watch the introductory video to Access, that is going to show you how to work with Access and create in Access these tables and fields, etc. All right. Thank you very much.